Hello, in this video, we're going to show you all about Apptivo's help desk system and how to utilize it for your customer support operations. As far as an agenda for today, it's going to be a pretty short video that just kind of shows the basics, but we'll start off by explaining what is the Apptivo help desk, what applications are involved. Then we'll talk about kind of what features and key configuration settings are available inside of the Cases app. Then we'll talk about what your kind of attack plan and quick setup steps could be if you want to go ahead and get started as fast as possible. And we'll actually walk through from the perspective of kind of a new company who's just registered. And we'll go show you some of these configuration steps, how to add users, add a customer, invite them to the portal, and everything like that you need to go ahead and get started. So with that, let's start off by just talking about what is Apptivo. So the help desk solution is a band of apps inside of Apptivo that drive your customer support processes. And they're centered around the Cases application right here underneath our CRM category. But the idea is that Apptivo is an integrated platform, so there's actually a bunch of different applications where they're completely integrated together. We have sales, project management, invoicing, etc. But specifically on the Help Desk app, it leverages a couple of the other apps in Apptivo. So you'll add customers, and you can add organizations and individuals, control what access you want them to have, whether you want to give them portal access or allow them to email in and create tickets, and you'll manage them through the Customers and Contacts app inside of the CRM. And these are the same customers and contacts that you would use in any other applications, like let's say if you did adopt Apptivo invoicing, you can actually create an invoice and select from the same customer and contact list. So that's kind of the vision of Apptivo, is bringing all the data together, but it works as a standalone help desk solution. So primarily you'll be looking at the Cases app, which is our ticketing application. And then we also have an Answers app, which is the knowledge base that can be presented out to the customer as well, or be used as an internal knowledge base. Now, the whole platform, it is based on a responsive design, so you'll be able to access it from any device just using the web. It's a completely cloud-based solution, so all you need is an internet connection, and you'll be able to get to the information. No hosting or equipment or anything like that. And as far as the pricing structure goes, Apptivo is actually available with no per app pricing, so it starts off at just $10 per user, and you're able to use all the features that we're going to demonstrate today. So when talking about the help desk, we have the knowledge base component, and we're actually not going to focus too much on knowledge base. We're going to be focusing in on the ticketing. And it all starts off with, how does a ticket come in? Because organizations will use this in very different manners. Sometimes you'll be using it as just an internal tool where the customer's calling in or you're meeting with them face to face. They're reporting issues, and then you want to capture them and ensure that they're resolved behind the scenes. Versus sometimes you actually want the customer to be able to raise their own issues into the ticketing system and continually see updates and be receiving notifications. And sometimes you may be wanted in between where they can submit their own tickets from your website or from email, and then you'll still handle it internally and just be sending notifications out to them periodically and not allowing them to get real-time updates. So all of this is kind of standard, where we'll pick all these intake channels that you want to get set up. I'll show you how to go about these. It'll all in the end up with creating tickets, so you can manually generate them on your own, or the system can generate them for you based on, for example, when you receive an email. Then you'll have tools inside of the Cases to help you communicate and update and track the resolution. There's lots of workflow tools and such built inside of here to make sure that you can be easily sending out emails. You don't miss follow-ups. We have SLAs to help measure how quickly that we're intaking and resolving tickets. There's lots of detailed features in this whole processing of the ticket that we're not going to dive too far into today, because what we want to focus on is just kind of getting started. And then even beyond that, there's the other apps inside of Apptivo. So some people will need their help desk ticketing system where you can take a ticket and then turn it into a work order and send a technician on site, or to turn it into a project. Maybe it's like a software company and this is a bug that they need to track against an existing project. So there's like kind of the next natural step if it's not just resolving the case. So that's kind of like the very high level as far as what the ticketing system is going to offer. But let's start to dive in and say, well, what are the specific features inside of ticketing that we need to be thinking about and getting configured? Because there's a lot of configuration settings available inside of ticketing, but it's designed to be either a very simple out-of-the-box platform, so we can get up and running in just a few minutes, or you can see there's a lot of depth to the details of the workflow we have. So if you're an organization with many different sales channels, different sales teams, they need to run different processes, they're working with different products, everything like that, there's a lot of tools to help you go and segment those. There's actually this app builder where we can clone the ticketing app, and you can actually create a completely separate instance of the ticketing app with its own configuration. Or we can build the workflow and the configuration into one application where everybody exists in one area, but we can do things like changing the forms or changing the workflow based on what type of ticket or team that you're working with. So although there's a lot here, we're not going to be able to cover everything in this session. I want to call out some specific kind of key configuration options that you want to be thinking about, some of which will be required for the initial setup, depending on the type of company you have. So when we run through here, you'll see the ticket settings are broken down in many ways, and we'll hop in and I'm going to be showing you some of these when we actually go through the setup. But the kind of key configuration ones starts off with collaboration. So there's all these tools around tracking activities, and there's an email connector, place to store notes and attachments for a ticket, and the collaboration settings let you control how these features behave. So you can turn some of the types of activities and such on and off, or specifically you can change the way that you end up communicating with the customer. So there's a newsfeed where I can see a history of activity. It's one of our collaboration features I'm going to show you. But in here, we can actually turn it on where I can communicate with the customer directly from the newsfeed. So I'll demonstrate how that creates a nice, easy flow where you can be viewing all the updates and pushing new updates onto a ticket, all from one location. The next one's all about the email notifications. So although you can absolutely use a ticketing system without email notifications, this is usually one of the cornerstones of people's configuration, is we'll create notifications using the basic email notifications, but then also the triggers feature, which is our general workflow application. And this allows us to define all these events like, okay, a ticket comes in, I want to assign it to this team and then notify them, or if a ticket becomes escalated, I need to go and assign a different team and then notify maybe a manager because it's a high priority. So these are all the tools that you can use to build this in, and they're also the tools that you'll use to build in your customer notifications. So if you do want to build an environment where the customer is receiving real-time updates, where your team can communicate directly with the customer from inside of the application, we'll be able to go and configure that using the email notifications. Right along with that is just the general email feature. So email is a very popular channel that people will be using to communicate. Not by everybody, but we're definitely going to spend some time talking about that. The majority of Apptivo users will have at least email communication as one of their support channels. And what we offer is two big things related to email other than the notifications the system sends. So what we have is email to case, which is an intake method, meaning you can set up something like support@apptivo.com. When it receives an email, it will automatically send a response to the customer, tell them their ticket's been generated, and then create a ticket inside of Apptivo for you. Then you have the email templates. So this is when you're actually communicating, sending email out from the system, whether it be an automated email notification or just kind of a canned response that you want to have your agents be sending out. You're able to go build in these templates, and they can include any sort of variables from inside of the ticket data. Then over here, you have kind of like, the real basic stuff. So types and statuses, all this standard fields. So we give you priority, status, the hours you can be available, where the ticket came from. A lot of that stuff is very standardized. So not every company needs to customize the priority, but really the types and statuses are quite specialized to your type of business. So definitely I want to just call out these two that pretty much every company is going to want to hop in here and do a little bit of work on these. And we'll go and I'll show you where those settings are controlled. But of course, you can change absolutely any field inside of the system. So that's actually done through this other area called master layout. And basically you have our standard fields. So we give you a standard ticket setup right out of the box, which I'll show you pretty much a right out of the box configuration. And then when I go to the master layout, I can take complete control. So this is where you can generate custom fields. You can change the values of our standard fields. We can rename. We can even do some pretty advanced stuff inside of here, like creating those conditions where if I have a ticket of type A, I want to show a section of fields. And if I have a ticket of type B, those fields aren't relevant, so we hide them away. Then these other two, these are just really big, especially in support systems. When you have larger teams, a queuing system is extremely important, of just being able to have each team log in and see the tickets that are currently assigned to them that are requiring their action. So they can take action, they can forward them around, they can monitor the other tickets that are sitting in their pipe. The idea is that the list layouts and views are the ability for us to build out lists of data and format them in a specific way. So we could filter a list of tickets by ticket type A or the assignment to a certain team. And then we could display certain information, like if it's assigned to the initial support rep, they just need to see like the customer's basic information, the nature of the issue, versus let's say if we're talking like this is a development ticket, we've sent it over to the engineer, maybe they have some other more granular details, and that only applies when you hit that certain stage. So when you create your list, the developer wants to see something completely different than the regular support rep. So we're able to create these different views and layouts and queues for each one of these teams to kind of get their own way to manage their tickets. Then the last key thing I want to call out is the portal component. So not everybody utilizes the portal, but it's built right in. It's very simple to use and get set up. So I'm actually going to demonstrate how to go and configure your portal and just actually invite your customers to join in, and then they can be able to both submit and view their tickets directly from the portal. So we'll check that out at the end. So that's kind of a quick overview of as far as like what is available inside of the ticketing application. And you can see some of these others we haven't even talked about. Like there's some really advanced stuff like being able to go in and build dashboards of metrics around ticket data, or we talked about those SLA items. You can automatically send out reports to your different users of ticket data. Lots of little granular stuff in here. But as far as like what you need to actually get started, we can break it down into really these 5 major steps. So, I mean, the first one is get signed up and get the users added in. So when we go through adding users, we'll have to determine what level of security we want to give to them, but there's also some built-in security roles, and I'll show you how I can go quickly add a user and get them set up with like a general read-write access to the ticketing apps. Then we'll want to come in, and if you're working with email, which a lot of teams are, we'll need to go through and configure teams and email accounts. So there's some setup you want to do to connect your email account to Apptivo, choose who's authorized to send from each address, and then that will all kind of take effect through not just the ticketing apps, but every app. But that allows us to, let's say, set up an environment where everybody's communicating from one common address, or everybody's emails sync in where even if they're communicating from individual addresses, everybody can see each other's communication threads. Then we have kind of 2 optional steps, which really just depends on the complexity of your help desk needs, where we've got deep field customization. We can go change all these email templates and workflow rules. That's all completely optional. It'll be completely required for some organizations, but many companies can just use the out-of-the-box configuration. And then same thing is the different intake methods in Portal. Some people are simply going to manually record every single ticket. They don't need to configure email. They just need a place internally to track it. That's okay. You can even run internal processes through ticketing. You don't necessarily have to have it be customer support driven, like an IT service desk would be an example of that. And then we will go configure like our portal and email to case and such. So I'll show you how to set up both of those. And then at the end, you basically just add your customers and start generating tickets. So I'll show you how to add a customer in and then invite them to a portal and then kind of just explain what the behavior would be. At the end, we'll just kind of talk about how to get some further help and move forward with all the more granular features. So with that, let's get into the application and let's show you around. So what we'll do is we'll hop back to the previous slide and we'll kind of reference back both of these as we're hopping back throughout. Okay, so we're going to start off, we're going to create our account and add some users. So I've already set up an account and done some basic configuration, just like added my apps up here and such. So you'll see I've got the cases app added right here. But when you want to add your users, you'll go into the human resources, and there's 2 applications in play when you're talking about users. We have employees and teams. These are very important applications. Teams is not used by everybody, but it's very common. And the way it works is you'll always start off by creating employees. So this is like a full HR app, but really this is your user access for the ticketing system. And what you'll see is, okay, I've got a few employees added, and when I want to add somebody new, you just create an employee. You'll have to provide a name and email, and it's a good practice to provide a manager. So the reason is depending on the level of security that you choose to implement. Like for example, we can have it where support agents can only see tickets assigned to their team rather than seeing all tickets. So that way a manager can always see tickets of their subordinates, where like an administrator of the organization or the support leader can see all tickets, whereas the individual teams beneath them might only be able to see their own tickets. So in this case, I could just come in. I'm going to add a name, email, and I've selected Lori, who is our current admin that we're logged in as the manager. And then the key thing is right here. So we're going to enable their app access. That means when we create this user, Apptivo sends them an email. And then we want to come in and we need to give them a security role. So we need to determine that our user is able to access the Cases app, and also if we want to give them the access to the Answers app, we'll want to go through. So you go through each app, and you'll see there's some predefined roles here. You can go in and actually create your own customized roles. So many of you will go and do that. There's an area in the employee settings, but we're just going to use one of the standard roles for now. And we go create that user. So upon creating this employee, the system will send them an email. They will now have a password. They can just go to apptivo.com, log in, and they'll be able to access your account. So once we have a user in there, it comes down to adding the teams, because each user will come in and then we got to set up emails and teams. So in this case, there's two components. One is the user has their own email. Now you define that when they set up, but we have an email connection. So it's very popular where people will connect their email account. So we have an IMAP connector, and each individual user will do this. So this is a one-time activity that each person does right when they log on. So each user will have a preferences area, which is their own personal settings inside of the system, and then they can come to email. So from here, I can go and I can add my email account. And we'll just kind of run through the steps right here real quick, but probably not finish the configuration just to save some time. So you'll type in your email. So I've got LoriMitch@outlook.com, and then I save it. And what you'll see is it'll give you this email ID right here. And we can go back to this page. So what we want to do is we want to set up the forwarding and the IMAP support. The idea is that Apptivo will sync both your sent and received email, and it does all the incoming email in real time. So if a customer sends you an email update, the system will bring it and sync it in pretty much immediately. But then even if you're sending email responses from an outside system like Outlook or Gmail, Apptivo will pick it up and then show that communication against the ticket as well. So in this case, I've got Outlook. Let's see if that password's automatically saved. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting authenticate. We'll want to make the IMAP work. I potentially have the wrong password in there, so we might just skip this step. Okay, perfect. So it was working fine. So that's step one, is you authenticate your account successfully. But then depending on your email provider, you will have to go in and forward your email. So this is where I would have to log into Outlook and go and set up the forwarding from here. So I'm going to skip that step, but each user needs to configure their own email account in order to get the email syncing back and forth. Then we have the teams, which is kind of part of the same effort, because I talked about how you could send from a common address. Like let's say that we've got all these different employees of SnapTime, my sample company, and we want them all to just send from support@snaptime.com. In that case, it is something that's possible, and what we can do is configure teams of people. So the teams can serve two purposes. One is you could just create a general team that allows you to send from an email address. So in this case, I could have a general support team. We could say support@snaptime.com, and it'd be that easy. So basically anybody who I choose to add to this team, which I can add any employee. So we can go and we can search and add all of our employees to this team, or just add our fresh one, Scott, and maybe Edna. And now both Scott and Edna have access to send from the support@snaptime.com email address. There's also some other functionality inside of the Cases app where I can choose the from email depending on like if I'm sending emails automatically or whether I'm sending email from a ticket delivered to different mailboxes. And then the teams can also help you separate, let's say if you do have support or development, or maybe you have level 1 and level 2 support. These are the methods where you can have tickets assigned to different groups of people. They can all share access to them, but of course tickets can also be assigned to individuals. So we'll go through, we'll set up all of our different teams, we'll add the users to them, and we'll get everybody to set up their own email and configure our email accounts. So that basically gets us everything in order as far as just general connectivity and our users accessing the system. Now it comes down to actually getting like your cases, processes ready to go. So this is where we start to dive into, there's going to be great differences. Some of you could skip 3 and 4 entirely, but most of you are going to be doing some components of this. So for here, we're going to want to go into the Cases application, and we're going to do some changes to these settings that we were looking at a moment ago. So let's actually just quickly run through these, and I'll show you kind of what each configuration setting is, and I'll make some quick recommendations. So we'll start off, we'll just run through in order, and we'll check out collaboration, and then we'll look at email notifications, and we'll talk about them each real quick, but we won't set them all up. All right, so what I'll do is I'll click on Cases up here in my top navigation. And once you enter the app, so each app kind of has its own settings area. So inside of here, okay, I've got a blank page because I don't have anything configured yet. So I've got my navigation over on the left. You'll see right out of the box, we have like those standard, we have standard fields available. So I mentioned we have priorities and types just built in by default. Some of these might make sense for you, but we can fully customize this. We can reorganize this left navigation, and you'll see like the queues automatically are constructed, but we can build our own custom queues. And then up here, yeah, we got the search functionality. You'll see that I can search based on fields. These are the current fields configured for the Cases app. but that's one of the things that you're going to want to change is, well, maybe some of these fields aren't relevant to you, or the values inside of them don't fully reflect what you offer to your customers. So that's where we're going to go into the settings area. Now to get to settings of cases, it's just to the left of the search field. We have these 3 dots for more. Then we can hop into settings. And here we have all of those different options that we saw inside of our image. So starting with collaboration, what you have is the different features like the newsfeed, the calendar, the tasks, etc. And I have mine enabled. I recommend looking at this one setting called newsfeed message as notes. Now, toggling this on gives you the ability to post an update into the newsfeed and instantly share it with either internally with the assignees of the ticket or directly with the customer. So we can go set up these notifications to shoot emails off to the customer where you can just post one update and it notifies both the customer and everybody internally and updates the ticket, and it's all in one action that you perform. So we can get that set up, and then we would go through and you can do some email notifications. So when we're talking about email notifications, you can say when a case is created, I want to automatically send an email notification. So what you can do is I could say notify the customer on create. So what I can do is I can have one notification for the customer and one notification for my team. So I could trigger the notification only when the case is in a specific status, or whoops, I just say notify on create. And then I would have an email template. So this is where we're going to get into the template configuration, because all of these different email notifications and workflow items. So the other one is triggers, where I can write like a custom event to send a notification out. So this one's a little bit more complex, but more flexible. But at the end, they're all going to be able to trigger actions of sending an email. And throughout, you're going to be able to see that I change who the email is sent from and also which email template I use. So over in the left, your email templates are going to be a big configuration where right here, I've got email templates. You'll see I've actually already created a couple before this example. By default, you don't have any email templates. And here, the template builder, it's a standard, it gives you a rich text editor, but you can do full HTML emails if you'd like. And what you'll see is you're able to insert any attribute of the ticket. So I can give them a full breakdown with the ticket ID, the current priority of it, who it's assigned to, any information I might want to show them. And then you control how might this email template be used. So you can say, will a support rep manually be sending this email, or would they be able to publish it into notes? Or if I have like an automated email only, like in this case, an automatic closure notification, I can just leave it disabled so my users aren't able to send it. So email templates, very big. You'll probably be creating a lot of those. And then when we kind of talk about more email to case, I want to come back to a little bit. So that's kind of the next step of your intake methods. So then we come through like types and statuses. And this is what I recommend that everybody take a look at. So the way that the field configuration works when you're talking about getting started is there's the standard fields and then there's custom fields. Now, if you looked at that form we had before, when I go create a case, and this looks pretty close to what you want, you might not have to create any custom fields. But even if this form is pretty close to what you want, where I come in, I select like the type of issue and then the priority of it. If you wanted to change these values, you see like, okay, on the fly, I could add a new priority, but the settings is going to allow you to control these standard fields. So any one of the fields you see right when you sign in, like status or priority or type, there'll be an area inside of the settings to change that. So we can navigate back in here, and if we click under the cases menu, we'll see these standard fields. So right here, I can click on priority, I can click on type, and we can make our adjustments. So in this case, maybe I would just want to turn off a lot of these standard ones, and I just want to have a very simple breakdown. And we could just, we can also rename them and reorder them. So I could say that my first one is just going to be a photo touch-up. So basically this is this example company is like a photography business who does school photo shoots and sports organization photo shoots. And yeah, sometimes people call in and maybe they didn't receive their prints. Maybe there was some sort of issue with them, or maybe they just wanted to give some feedback on the process. So in that case, I can create my own values, I can rename them, and just create this list however I want. So let's say we've got photo touch-up, feedback, and we have a delivery or shipping issue. So I can create these types, and a lot of the stuff inside of here is going to be drag and drop. So for example, I could say, well, shipping issues are my second most common after photo touch-up. So I can create my list like that, and then that will instantly take effect for everything. So when I go create my ticket right now, I'll see my new types have taken effect and is defaulting to photo touch-up. So you'll want to go through, you'll want to do some basic configuration to make this form look how you want. But then there's more detail. So other than just changing the values, right here you'll see the customer and contact are down at the bottom. So okay, great feature. If you already have a customer, you can just start typing in their name, or if you know the specific contact, we could just type in their name right here, and then it can override whoever that customer is, if it's because it'll filter down to just the contacts for Foothill when I have it typed in. But then let's say you want to move these up to the top, or I want to delete this section. I'm not tracking against items or projects or anything like this. So this is all done through the master layout. So when you come in, there's a section underneath Customize App, and this is where we get into the deeper customization. So when you click on Master Layout, now you have all the different fields available, and I can do things like scrolling down to the bottom and taking my customer and contact, and maybe I drag these upward. And maybe I determine that I don't need this section anymore. So I can simplify my entire form, and maybe I just want to move some things around a little bit and reorder them to get them looking how I want. So let's see. Maybe we put customer here, or we could say we want to fill the contact first, because then it would auto-populate the customer. So we can do little tricks like that to reduce the amount of time it takes our support reps to actually fill in a form. Okay, so I get everything looking how I want. I could come and delete this stuff if I wanted to. And then I go ahead and I save it away. And now my form adapts to what I had just done. So now you see I just have a slightly simpler form when punching in a ticket. And if I come to start typing in Maxine's name here, the system will automatically go and fill in their customer. So you do little tricks like this based on your process and whether you usually know a business first or the person first, and then you can guide the form to help customize that. There's much more advanced stuff like when I change the type to hide or remove a section of fields or change values or make things mandatory. I'm not going to hop into that level of detail today, but that does exist within that master layout feature. Okay, so heading back here, I talked a little bit about triggers. It's really just the workflow element. What you'll see is that all the features, what you construct inside of the master layout, they all depend on that. So once you create a field inside of the master layout, like let's say I wanted to create a brand new field. So in this case, I want to track the type of organization, because in my case, I'm dealing with some sports organizations, some schools, and maybe some individuals as well. And what you have is this is one of the cool features that can come out of the CRM, where if you have a field against the customer, because you could have many issues with this customer over time, and it's always going to be the same type. They're always going to be coming from a school, something like that. So what you can actually do is say that when I select a customer, there's a field on that customer, and I'd like to display it inside of my, my case. So this is actually a really more advanced feature. I just want to kind of quickly show some of the power that sits behind this integration. So what I could do is I could call this my org type. So I have a field on my customer called org type. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say that this field is going to reference a field on the customer. So whoever gets selected from there when I'm filling in the ticket. And I want to display the org type field from that customer. And I'll show you the result of that. This is pretty cool. So what you have when you're keying in a ticket is if I come in and do the same thing. So I just type in Maxine's name. Then it will select the customer, and then, oh, sorry, I guess I've got to have the proper org type on here. Got to delete that one, and I believe Foothill has one. Yeah, I have to grab one. There we go. So when you select the customer, it in real time looks at the Foothill High School record, and it pulls that field of school. Because basically behind the scenes, when I'm typing in these customers, there's actually a separate app where you can manage all the fields on a customer. So you'll notice I can put a brand new customer in directly from the ticketing app. I don't have to go to that other application, but Apptivo gives you a full customer database automatically. So you'll notice I can key in a brand new customer, and you'll see that my form is totally customized. So just like the ticket, how you can change the fields there, I can determine what details I want to capture about each customer that I enter into the system. So in that case, this org type field was the custom field that we just showed inside of our case. And I could also create another one that shows which grades are serviced by that organization and then display that information in the ticket. So the idea is as you create all these fields and do everything, they become available in all the different workflow selectors. So for example, when we talk about the triggers feature, if I come in here and create a workflow rule, I'm able to come in and select from any one of the attributes that I've created on this record itself. Okay, so field configuration is a really big one, and then you have the layout configuration. So I showed you how when you log in, you kind of get some default views and such over here on the left. So in this case, there's the views you get, which filter your data, and then you have the columns that appear. So in this case, I could go like one by one and just change the size of the case, but if I've got like that org type field, I could come and then expose that within my list layouts. So the idea is the list layouts are these common sets of columns that you want to display, and your fields are available right here. So I can come in and I can display the org type of a field within my list layout. And then maybe in my case, like the assigned to is not quite as important. So I can resize everything, get it looking how I want. And once I've saved it, now every time I go bring up a list of cases, you'll notice my columns have changed. So that's really important, once again, just to kind of customize it. So yes, out of the box works fine, but you can get a lot more power by displaying the right information for your teams. Okay, so the last piece we really want to talk about leads us right into the next section, which is the portal. So getting the actual intake method set up. So first you want to make sure you got your team in order. Everybody's in the system. Now the system is working how you want. It's got the right details. You have the right teams. You put in any sort of assignment rules that you need to get configured. And then you move into opening up the ticketing system, getting everything ready to generate tickets, and you're basically ready to get going. So setting up intake methods, we can kind of hop back to this one. So we've got, you potentially are picking up the phone, you have a support chat software, you have a website form, you have email, you're using the Apptivo portal, these different methods that come in and generate tickets. So you basically have manual generation and automated generation. So for manual generations, it's pretty straightforward. You don't do any configuration. When you pick up the phone, you hit the create button, you start typing in the details as you go. For automated generation, we support two different methods. Well, technically three. So there's the portal. You can do a custom web form on any website or custom web app, or you can do the email to case feature. So email to case and portal are really the two common ones that you can do. So in that case, email to case gets set up right here. And the way you configure it is you'll set up like your email account. So I could have my main Lori, but usually it'll be something like, okay, support@snaptime.com. But then maybe what you have is you want to have, there's a different email actually receiving it. So what'll happen is when I save this, it'll give me a forwarding address. So even if SnapTime is not a real email, it's an alias, as long as Lori has access to it, she could forward the email and Apptivo would only pick up the email address to support@snaptime. So this way, if you have like 5 different email inboxes, one for different clients or lines of business, they can each be routed in. They can be assigned to a different person. So I can create several different email accounts. They can all have a different SLA they should follow. And then they can also send different automated responses. You can also trigger the automated responses based on the time of day, like whether you're considered on shift or out of shift, you could send a different email template. So doing this, once you configure it one time, every email that you send to here will go through this rule and generate a ticket for you. The other method is going to be through the portal. So down here, there's actually no configuration required as far as the portal itself goes. So it just gives you a URL. You can hop in here. There is a place to do some basic configuration as far as look and feel. We're not going to cover that today. We're going to keep it nice and simple. And you can bring this up, but it's going to require like the customer login and such. So what we need to do is we would need to add our customers and get them invited to really get this portal up and running. So really that's kind of like the last step, is to add a customer and get the tickets created. So we saw that we had already added a couple customers, but what'll happen is, since you don't have to use the portal, I mean, you can add a customer and then just track them internally. So they'll still be selectable in a ticket, regardless of whether or not they're a portal user. Now, the portal is actually controlled within the CRM. So earlier I was showing you how I can go and like manually raise a ticket. So like, let's go manually raise a ticket for Maxine, who we were talking about earlier. So it says, okay, she's from the Johnson family. I can say that this ticket was from a phone call and she never received her photos. So I can type in that message. I can go put in a longer description, everything like that, and I could just go create it. So the idea is, you'll notice that I don't see Maxine's email or phone number or anything on the ticket itself. That's because these are hyperlinks. So because Maxine was already in my system, if I want her cell phone number or email, I can just click on that and it opens up this panel and shows me her contact details. Or if you're dealing with organizations, you also have the company details present right here. So the idea is that this data is actually stored in another app. Like there's actually a full profile and history for either one of these. And I can get to it by clicking on this. So what we're doing is we're actually giving you a history of interactions and tickets with each and every customer you work with. So the idea is that when you're looking at the details of a customer, you'll notice it looks just like the details of a ticket that we were just on a moment ago. But inside of here, I have my own email tab. I have this cool news feed, which you'll see captures all the events across all tickets. So this is a really cool view that you typically don't get out of all systems, where our CRM is plugged in with the help desk, meaning all of your support and billing and sales and other activities are aggregated into one single view. But then of course you can go just capture a list of tickets related to a customer. So we have this 360 view, which shows you all the related data throughout our different applications. And you could go defaulted to say, show me their cases. So whenever a case comes in, it pops up and looks like this. And you'll notice I put in one feature. We haven't even talked about the highlighting rules that you have in the system, but that's why mine's popped up as red, is because it's a high priority ticket. So the idea is that either by searching through your customer database or looking through your contacts, so I could just go find like an individual person, I would then be able to go and find all the tickets for them. So I should be able to come and find Maxine from here. And I can also see the help desk tickets from this view right there. So this is kind of a cool feature. It just shows you all the interactions regardless of where they are. But then the contact is where you're going to enable access for the portal. So once they're in the system, they can be used in a ticket. But if we want them to be able to create their own tickets through the portal, when viewing the contact, there's this enable login button. But out of the box, you won't see this. There's one setting that you'll need to change as an administrator, and it's inside of the settings right here. So we go to the contacts app settings, and we need to go underneath security and then actions. So this is another one-time change because you might need to protect who is allowed to grant portal access. So there's the actions of enable login and disable login, which are turned off by default. So you can either turn them on, which makes them globally available to anybody who can edit contacts, or, which is recommended, you can come and create a custom privilege. So before I just gave a generic security role earlier to my employees, this is where when you want to get more advanced, you can create your own custom security roles and you can create them with custom privileges. So that way I can say enable portal access is a security privilege. And in order to perform one of these actions, you have to be granted the enable portal access. So that's the type of control you can do. This is actually present all over. You can set this type of access on individual fields and features in the tickets. But in this one example, it's very, very common to perform. So instead, we'll just limit the access to the general read-write capability for now. And then that would give you the view that we were on a moment ago. So we'll just go back to that contact. Okay, so once you've enabled that one time, now whenever you're looking at a contact, you're going to have the option to enable them. So what happens is when I click on this button, it would just go send out an email and invite them to the system. But instead, let's just go create a brand new customer in contact and then invite them. Actually, I think let's just add a contact to an existing customer, because what you'll have is the contact, the individual person themselves is what gets access to the portal. Even though you might have a company with a bunch of different people and contacts you can have it where only one or two contacts have access, and each contact could have different levels of access. So let's say if you are using some of the other Apptivo apps and you have like help desk and invoicing and project management, you could have a contact you can only see help desk tickets and projects, or one that sees all, or one that sees just the invoices. So let's just go quickly create one of these contacts. So we're going to create Kenzie Masterson here as a sample contact. And let's just say that she's a school administrator. So you'll see like I've got all the details I can track about the individual person. So once again, you can control this, look at her cell phone number and such on there. And then the email is important because this is what we're going to use to send off the invite to her account. So what I'll do is I'll just paste in her email account and then I create. So the first step is to create her. So now I can select her whenever I'm raising a ticket for Tustin High School. But I need to enable her login so she can raise tickets herself and see her own updates. So to perform that, I just click on this enable login button. It'll tell you that the contact's been updated. You'll see it changes to disable login. So that's how you know when somebody's already been granted portal access or not. And then after a moment, we'll be able to see that the email pops up on the other screen. And let's see if we're logged in. So, yep, It'll just take a moment, so that'll pop up. And in the meantime, what we'll do is we'll navigate on over to the portal, and we'll just quickly show you that functionality. So your portal URL, it's automatically generated for you. As we saw, that was available in the cases settings under interface if you ever wanted to go check it out. So we can just pop this open into a new tab, and it'll come generically skinned right out of the box. Okay, so then here we've got our email. See, just gives them the option, okay, I'd like to invite you to do business, and we hit accept. So now you'll see it'll just pre-populate. Now we're acting as the customer, and we can just come and set our password. So the customer sets their own password for the one-time setup, and now this person's granted access. It'll log them into the portal, and then this is where they'll see the various options set above. So in this case, you'll see, yep, you can enable the different applications, but they could hop on over to cases. We don't have anything for this contact yet. They're brand new, but they can come in. They can create anything they want. It's all based on the security role that you give them. Because the one piece I didn't show you is actually back on that contact. If we go back a couple steps, first you got to enable their access, but then we also have to determine what level of access they have. So just like you can control the access for your employees and give them a security role, you can also give a security role to the individual contacts. So this is how you determine whether they can access just invoices or cases or whatever it might be. So I come into here, I hit cases, and I give them a specific role, and then we go, and that would control what they can or cannot do within the portal. Okay, so we've covered a lot today. Basically, that's what all you should need to know to get instantly set up and started. But really, as we mentioned, there's a lot more detailed and granular features than that available inside of the platform. So as far as getting further guidance, the best way to get help is, one is if you have any specific questions, like you remember we talked about triggers, definitely you can reach out to our support chat right here. They're staffed 24/7. They can help guide you towards any specific features and how to use them. Otherwise, if you're kind of more of a do-it-yourself type person, head on over to the Apptivo website. You'll see there's some further information on the help desk solution right here. Or if you head under help and then head over to the answers section, you'll be able to see that there's the cases and answers areas over here in the left column. So you can filter on down by those to get all the detailed granular help articles. So with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.